Mike.
I'm Brad.
And this is Ministry Chemistry.
Good. Can you say it faster?
Here we go.
Welcome to another episode of Ministry Chemistry. We are so glad you are joining us today, where we are talking about the word no.
No.
And how in life, if we're trying to be more intentional and own our lives a little bit better, how no is not a dirty word. Because it's all about prioritizing. Prioritize.
Takes practice.
It does take practice. Why does it take practice to just say something simple as, no, that sucks. I'm not doing that.
Because we're people pleasers.
You think that's what it is?
And we don't like to say sucks.
Christianese, right? You will not say that. It's like the word frickin'. Or friggin', right? When you were a kid, did you try to get
my
away with it like
kids.
freaking or frickin' or
Yeah.
friggin'? And then people
Yeah.
like spell it like it's a thing. And
I
you're
said-
like, you're so, that's not a thing.
I said a lot worse words than that when I was growing up.
Oh, I say a lot worse words now, but I'm
I know
saying
you
when
do.
you
You
were
just
little.
had you just had ease then. You didn't have
Yeah.
Christian.
Christianese, right? Did you ever have to get your mouth washed out with soap?
No.
I didn't
Oh.
either. I'm just asking.
Twas soap poisoning. If you don't get that reference, we can't be friends.
Twas soap poisoning? It sounds Monty Python-ish.
A Christmas Story.
Oh,
It may be
we've
the
talked
greatest
about
movie
this. I
ever.
don't.
Nope. Don't.
No,
nope.
don't
I gotta
say
say
on.
it. Come on.
No,
Moving
don't
on.
say that.
Okay.
I don't really
Audience,
like
this
that
is one of
movie.
those. If someone asks you the question,
Do you want to watch
like
The Christmas Story? I always say, not really.
Do you like A Christmas Story? This is an instance where you
No.
don't use the word no.
This is, it's okay. It's just okay. The thing is, okay, this is going to drive you mad. Hey, everybody. I've never seen it in full.
Stop it.
Because it's always on TBS. I've seen the whole stupid movie, but I've never sat down and watched it
It's
in
on
full.
12 times on Christmas Eve.
And TNT, right? Don't they both run it or something
No,
like that?
TBS 24 hours. So it's
Yeah.
12
There are
times.
much
You have-
better Christmas
You have
movies.
like 12 opportunities to see it.
I have a dear friend from my hometown who he's got the lamp. He's got the,
Yeah.
I mean, they did their
Yeah.
family Christmas card.
I watched it
like,
3 times this year.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law has been to the house. Have you been to the house in Cleveland?
No.
Oh, you need
The-
to.
I
You need
what?
to go.
So you're
on.
not really
I
a
haven't.
fan. So you really don't have anything to say.
It's a house.
How many times did you watch White Christmas?
It's my wife's favorite Christmas movie.
Ding, ding, ding,
So
ding,
a
ding.
lot.
How many
You
times?
should come over. She has a white Christmas, Christmas watching party every year. She'd come over and hang out.
Okay, I'm not going to invite myself to your wife's
I just
White
invited
Christmas.
you. I just invited you,
party.
and she would love
I'm
to
the
have you.
whitest of Christmas. Can I
She would
come?
have a. She would.
Golly.
So but on our last episode, we talked about me being an extrovert, and our friend
Right.
Keith was so surprised doing our personality profiles that my wife is more extrovert than I am.
Really?
If that's possible.
I didn't know that actually.
Heck yeah,
Oh
she
my
is.
golly.
Yeah.
I've said golly twice now. I need to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness.
I won't even ask how many times you watched the Muppet Christmas Carol. The best day of the year. Okay, so today we're talking about
No.
Have we started this
See what I did?
episode?
the
yet?
word no. You say what makes it so hard to say the word no is because of people pleasing.
Yeah.
I think people in general, to a certain degree, are people pleasers.
Okay.
I think there is a human nature aspect to that. We just have different motivations for why we're people
That's
pleasers.
right.
Some people are people pleasers because they generally want other people to be happy with life. Some people are people pleasers because they want other people to look at them as, oh, what you did for me.
Mm-hmm.
So you're people pleasers because you're self-pleasing, essentially.
Yeah, and I would say sometimes I struggle to say no just because I want to prove to myself I can do it. Like there's a little bit of
That's that task-oriented coming out.
yeah, and self-sufficiency, a little bit of stubbornness, like all those
Yeah.
things. Like I can do this. I don't have to say no. I can take this extra thing on that there's no possible way on God's green
Yeah.
earth I can get done.
Yeah.
I am woman. Hear me
But
roar.
I will. I will do this. But you have to learn along the way that you have to say no to some things or else other things start to crumble. So the interesting thing about you starting it off with people pleasing is the thing. Ultimately, you're disappointing a set of people by
That's
not
right.
saying no.
You will let someone down with the word no.
It's inevitable.
And so
Yeah.
in that whole internal decision making, you've made a choice. You have chosen one set of people or a person over another set of people or a person.
Yes.
And I'm
And
guaranteed
that's usually yourself.
that's right. You think so? It's not the people you love the most? Because I think when you're not in a healthy state, the people you end up disappointing are the people you love the most, because they'll show you grace and forgiveness and let it pass time after time after time again.
Well, some of the choice goes back to what we talked about last week with the life-giving versus life-draining. Like that has to drive our no's and yeses to a certain degree,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
But the problem is, like you said, we're always going to disappoint someone. That's because everyone thinks their thing is the most important
Right.
thing.
To them, it is.
Right. Yeah, and that's true.
So to even function in a community, and by community I don't mean like a neighborhood, but like your circle of people where there's grace and mercy extended, and they say, hey, that's not the most important, or hey, if you believe that's important, we're going to be here for you when you come back and realize it's not. Do you think that's most people's typical experience, that they're living in a very forgiving group of people or family or unit where they're going to say, it's okay, go and do, we know you over commit, we know that you're squeezing us in between 3 other sets of ball games or dinners or events tonight, go be, we love you.
I think within my, I'll use my family as a for instance. In my time through classes, my wife was always saying, it's just a season. You got to do what you have to do. And after the season is over, then things will get to normal. You can get control. She can get back a little bit of control of saying yes and no for me. So some things, it is a season, but it's also surrounding yourself with people that can, I don't know, filter that out and give you parameters, help you with the parameters that you need to have.
It's just a season, that phrase, is that Christianese?
It is Christianese.
Yeah, I would say
Do you
so.
think non-Christians
It's
say that?
pastorese.
Do you think people who don't follow Jesus know that, like, this month, this quarter, this semester they're living in, even this 2 years, it's just a season, it will pass?
I think some might, but do they embrace it? No, they'll just complain about it.
Yeah, I don't
And-
use the word season. It's more like, well, once we meet this deadline,
Yeah.
you know,
Life will return to normal.
Yeah, once we, I don't know, we use that at work. We use the busy season because it's the travel and retail is
Yeah.
cyclical. So we somewhat like, well, travel's gonna be busier this season, but it's not the way we use it. It's not the same context. There's that word again.
Ooh.
But back to your question, are we in a forgiving society? Or I would say we're much more in a peer pressure society.
Yes.
And people have varying ways of peer pressuring you into yes. I would say the biggest one is guilt trip.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Guilt trip is the number one adult peer pressure.
Or so along with that, I won't say dangling something, some carrot in front of you that you want and you can only get by fulfilling X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z require you to say yes.
Tit for tat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just recently in the news, right? The whole like college entrance scandal that's going on where Lori Loughlin, Aunt Becky from Full House, right? Felicity Huffman. Have you read about this? Where they got their kids into schools by, not the right way. And yet we who work with teenagers, or we who have just been able to go to college, know the hard work you have to put in sometimes, often, most times should be, to get to where you're going. And our teens and families, when do they sit down and have a meal during a week? Because they're running from thing to thing to thing to thing, because the carrot in front of them is what? Athletic success, college entrance, being of a certain stature or status in a community. And so they're choosing yeses based on some of these things that I don't know how life-giving those things are. But is that judgy for me to say? Is it all up to the individual?
Well, I had a conversation with a coworker yesterday about that very thing. And this is very much church related, but people say no to church and church related things in order to say yes to other things, much more than they do the other way around. And I'm not, and I said this to my coworker. I'm like, I'm not discounting the value. I played sports growing up. I was a busy kid. I understand the value in that, but just once, like one time in a year, in say youth ministry, we're like, hey, this is our biggest event. This is the best opportunity for your kid to connect with our group or to serve or do whatever. Would you be willing to say no to that other thing in order to say yes to this? Maybe there's a peer pressure aspect to that, but
There is, absolutely.
Can we use that? Are we allowed to?
Well, and here's the thing. So in thinking through, okay, for all you listeners, we all are youth ministers. And so we work with teenagers on the regular. And one of the things that
But they
our
are not
team,
regular teenagers.
they're not, there isn't such a thing as a regular teenager. One of the things my most recent team and I have been talking about is how do we not shame? So there's one thing to peer pressure for the good, but there's another thing to make a kid or a family feel shame in the choices they're making. And that's what I'm talking about with the judgment. Like maybe your hyper involvement in this activity for your kid or as a family is the place where you actually find community that you don't otherwise find. Now, I think a adequate pushback would be, well, if they were at church, they could have community there. Well, okay, but they're not. And so why am I going to shame a kid for the one place they might feel the most value and worth in the entire week? Because I should? Because I'm going to Jesus juke them and say, you could find value and worth here at church.
yeah, I don't believe in the shaming.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus didn't shame.
No.
Jesus just
You
laid
should say
out.
that again for anyone confused.
Jesus didn't shame.
He didn't.
Jesus just laid, and this is the approach. I'm not always good at it because I'm human. I'm a person. I succumb to using peer pressure at times, just like anyone else does. But Jesus basically laid out, hey, this is why this is valuable and this is not. And it's up to you to make that choice for yourself.
There it is. It's up to you to make that choice for yourself.
But-
Of what is of value and what's
But
not.
at the same time, is it shaming to tell someone like, hey, this is why it might be valuable for you to say no to that instead of saying no to this?
Well, I think this conversation gets really interesting when you look at it more on a larger picture, because there's one sense of me, Renee, has to say yes and no to things in my life. It's another when you're making those decisions for a family and you're placing, as a family, we're going to place value in this area or this area. It's a whole nother when you're teaching your kids, whether they be in a ministry, on a team, in your neighborhood, or just, your own biological kids, like, hey, here's how we make decisions as a family. Here's how we choose things. And how do you do that? How do you let them fall short of some of the things you think they should value over others, and decide what's worth the fight and what's worth letting it go?
They can't see my face again.
Because I'll give you some space here, because my mom had these two things we had to do while growing up. My sister and I both had to take piano lessons, and we had to go to church every week.
Yeah.
It was a non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like I even tried to negotiate it, because it wasn't on the table for negotiation. It wasn't up for conversation. Like, it wasn't even like I thought about it and thought she's going to say no. It wasn't allowed to be thought about.
The other part, from again, I'm older than you guys, and I played sports, and Sunday and Wednesday were off limits.
Yeah, to sports in general.
Nothing
That's
was
right.
scheduled on those days, and now everything is scheduled completely through. It doesn't matter what you're talking about, sports or dance or
Academic
things,
conferences.
Yeah,
or, yeah.
absolutely. They have to fill every day. We're going to use whatever day we have available to us. Sunday, great. Let's use Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, we never had
There's
to.
been a societal
We never,
shift.
we never had to make a decision, because Sunday and Wednesday, my family didn't do a whole lot of Wednesday, but Sundays for sure, morning and evening. Sundays were church, and there was nothing else. So,
Thinking about this in the context of why we started down this path in the first place, I feel like in a ministry world, we feel a lot of pressure to say yes to church related stuff because so many other people are saying no, and they're saying yes to other things that are in competition with the church.
I don't think you should say yes to church just because church is on the radar to say yes to. It's like saying you should listen to music because it's Christian. No, there's some bad Christian music, and you don't have to listen to it.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go down that path for a while. Like, that's just not good music. It's not good lyrics. It's just not good. But cool that you're on the radio. You know, you don't have to listen to it just because it's Christian. You don't have to go to it just because it's church. And so when I talk about not shaming students, part of that is, okay, if you're not going to be here, then my pushback's going to be, how are you being Jesus to the places where you are going to be? And how are you shining light and being a witness and example? Not to discredit connection with the body of Christ, but to say, if you're not going to be in the body of Christ, then how are you going to be the light of Christ where you are? And so to your point, yeah, you don't have to do it because it's church, but shouldn't you consider where you are being and where you're not?
Well, more what I was getting at there.
Are being like Arby's.
I think what I was getting at is there are certain things about church that are necessity. You know,
necessity for what? For who?
I guess that's a good point. There are certain things about how we do church. Let's put it that way. There are certain things that are about how we do church that are a necessity.
Like what?
In order to pull that off, someone has to say yes to it. Like, in order to have music, doesn't someone have to say yes to leading that music? You know? I mean, unless you're in an old school hymnal church, you know, good for you. But then you got a lot more people that have to say yes to actually opening the book and singing. That's what I'm getting at. Like, in order to have preaching, which Paul says is necessity for having church, someone's got to say yes to standing up and delivering that sermon. And that's what I was getting at is I feel like we, not just us three, but we as in people in ministry and not just in ministry, but people who serve in the church, feel a lot of pressure to say yes when maybe we should be saying no sometimes, because it's like, if we don't say yes, who's going to? Maybe we're too quick to say yes and not allowing the space for someone else to
step up
because we're afraid to say no, because we're afraid it won't happen.
What's an interesting thought? If I say no, who's going to say yes?
Exactly.
And if it doesn't get done, doesn't matter. I think that's a great healthy space to be in. Like, hey, if this doesn't get done, maybe it's not that important. And if someone says, by golly it is, I'll say golly again, by golly it is important, okay, well, you do it.
Well, I think
and why are we so afraid to say that?
I think it's making that choice well ahead of time.
Of what's important and what's not?
No. That you're going to say no regardless of how important it is.
So this gets me to a question specifically Mike related, because something you do every Sunday is very admirable to me, which is you sketch out your whole week of yeses and nos.
Somewhat.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? What does that look like?
I'm trying to think of what you're asking about specifically.
Well, there was a time when we were all talking about just the crazy busy of life and of our weeks.
Okay.
And you would take, a Sunday through Saturday kind of glance at your week.
Yeah.
Or I guess Monday through Sunday. And you'd say, all right, it takes me 5 minutes to drive to the gym. I'll spend this much time at the gym. It takes me 5 minutes to drive home. I mean, you would plan out all your yeses and nos to know where your free space was.
I go through seasons of that, to use your Christianese again. But generally speaking, yeah, I still kind of map out my week, and that's both for me and my wife, so that we're on the same page. I still say Google Calendar saved my marriage. I say that jokingly. It's just so we're on the same page. But yeah, I map out my week and I see, okay, these are necessities. These are the things like I have to say yes to, or I won't have a job and I won't be able to like provide for my family. Right. So obviously that's got to be important. And these are the spaces I can feel like they don't conflict with family. And these are the family spaces where Saturday is one instance. Like we do a youth event usually one Saturday a month, but the other Saturdays, unless I have to work for some reason, those are no Saturdays. Regardless, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how important it is. That's a no, because I need to say yes to my family.
I think one of the healthy spaces I've grown into, and it took a while, was to be able to say no and not feel the need to give anyone a reason.
Yeah.
To not have to justify my no. To just say, nope, I'm unavailable then.
I can't.
I can't do it then. And it's okay. And you don't need to know why, because you needing to know why means you're going to judge whether it's a valid reason or not. And I don't need you to judge whether it's valid or not. I'm saying that's protected time.
I'm saying no because I want to lay on my couch today and watch TV.
Some days you need to do that.
Yeah, but I'm saying I'm not saying that's I'm not saying that's wrong.
Right.
I get it. Like sometimes I'm like, you know what? I just want to take a me day and do nothing.
Yeah.
I don't care if there's, 10 baskets of laundry that need to be done. I just want to
They're not getting
chillax
done
today.
They'll still
But,
get done tomorrow.
Man, that invites a lot of peer pressure. You got to be ready for that.
Sure.
You got to be ready for that.
Yeah. Okay. See, I'm beyond it. I'm like, if
It
I want to.
depends on who's asking you to do stuff.
Yeah.
If it's your
Yeah.
wife, you're like, no, I'm just going to lay here.
And I'm just saying, like,
That's
see
when
all that
Brad comes
laundry.
knocking on your door. Mike, I need your couch for the night.
but let's say
I need to lay somewhere, and it can't be my
let's
house.
let's say for instance, like your church is having a work day on a Saturday morning, and like I could easily say, no, I'm not going to be there because family is Saturday day, or Saturday is family Saturday day. Saturday is
I
family
don't know
day.
what I'm
like I
saying.
get up and I make pancakes with my kids, and we just kind of hang out and do what we do as a family. It would be a lot tougher sell if I'm like, you know what, Saturday's my sleep-in day, so I'm not going to be there. I'm not saying that's a disqualifier. It's wrong. I'm just saying you're going to get a lot more peer pressure for the latter than you would for the former.
Well,
That's the whole premise of that is giving the reason why. Just say, I
no,
can't.
I can't.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't need to tell you why. you
No,
can peer
why?
pressure me. No, I'm just not coming. But you have to. No, I don't.
But the other piece of that, and we've talked a little bit about this before, is that when you work as a vocational minister and you're like, I put in my 5 days this week, hands up, I'm saying no to everything else.
You're only putting in 5?
So did everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else worked 5 days too.
Yeah.
And now a Saturday work session is asked. And if you're a part of a church family, now again, no shame, no guilt, but like, come on. Like, what are you doing because you get paid to do it? And what are you doing because it's just the call of Christ or you're part of a church community? And you got to make those yeses and nos as well.
See, I'm thinking though, back to the point that Brad just made. I think maybe it's just me. I feel the need to qualify no's because I know how much I hate it when someone doesn't do that for me.
Oh, so you want to judge others, so you're like, I'll open myself up
No.
to judgment.
All right, so tell me this. I mean, whatever night, pick a night. Brad and I do youth group on Wednesday nights.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a kid text you on Wednesday night and say, I'm not coming tonight, what's your first question?
Internally, I don't usually ask.
You don't ask why?
I don't ask why
I've
because
Here's
it
a
doesn't.
shocker. Mike, ask why.
I've learned not to. I've learned to just, you know what? We'll miss you tonight.
Sure.
Okay, take your space, whatever that is. I know there's probably something deeper going on, so I usually follow up with,
Yeah.
hey, is everything going okay? You know, not a why didn't you come tonight? I'm judging you. It's more like, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? You know, kind of just trying to open the dialogue, because most times a kid doesn't just say, I don't want to be there.
Right.
There's something deeper going on. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's a Mike problem. I feel the need to qualify no's because I want no's qualified.
I had to think about it. I want no's qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody just says, I'm not going to be there, why not?
Well, and it's living into that community of accountability and transparency. So
Yeah.
take it on a broader scale. And in the church body, if someone's missing for a week or 2 or 3, who follows up and says, hey, where
Yeah.
were you? Where have you been? Not because you needed to be here, but because I missed you, because I love you and I care about you. Take it outside of the context of church when you're in the office setting and you're like, hey, just to be a good coworker, a good teammate, I'm going to follow up and see how you've been, where you've been. You seemed absent in that meeting, even though
Right.
you were physically present. You know, how often are we doing that? And then how often are we saying, you need to say no to this? Like, there's this extra thing happening. I'm going to be a friend and just give you freedom to say no.
The difference is in that example of a student contacting you and say, I'm not coming tonight, is if they want followed up on, they're going to text you and say, hey, I'm not coming tonight. Otherwise, they're just not going to show.
That's true.
And then it's on you whether,
Right.
I'm going to reach out because this person is normally here and they weren't. I want to find out why. Is there anything I can do? Are you in
There's
a
the
situation?
invitation.
Yeah.
To talk into it, yeah.
Yeah. So that's somewhat different.
But I'm thinking about this even before you said that. I think to some degree, in what you said about the accountability and living in community, to some degree, we want people to qualify our no's.
Yeah.
Like if I just woke up,
Yeah.
let's just say I woke up on every Sunday for a month and I text my pastor and said, we're not going to be there. We're not going to be there. If he didn't ask why at some point, I'm going to be like,
Does he not
should
care
I
that I'm
find
not
another
there?
church? Like,
Right.
does he not care that I'm just not there and I'm not qualifying why? I'm not saying, hey, my whole family's, dying today or I have to work today or whatever. I'm just saying, no, I'm not going to be there.
Yeah.
I want him to qualify that.
Okay.
I want him to show that he cares.
And I think you just want to say the word qualify more and more too as we go on. So that's good. Oh, the stare, the glare and the stare. So here's the last question of this episode. You said Google Calendar saved your marriage.
I say that jokingly.
I
My
know,
marriage
I know.
wasn't in jeopardy. I just say
Dad.
that.
Everybody
'cause
pray for them.
I say that joke. It made
Google's
life.
like, we can save marriages. Here's our
It's their
calendar.
new tagline.
They
There's
know.
80 billion colors
They
you
know.
can use.
They're watching you. They
I
know.
know. They've already heard me. My FBI agent's like, ooh, you like Google Calendars. Now those ads are going to stop popping up.
It made life a lot easier.
The Google Calendar.
Yeah.
What other resources help you say no? And resources could be people. They could be tools like a Google Calendar, books you've read. What other resources have helped you in the prioritizing of your life and saying the right no's and the right yeses?
Podcasts.
Yeah?
And I say that legitimately, jokingly and legitimately. Yeah. But it's funny because, like, you read a book, you listen to a podcast, you don't absorb every bit of it, but little snippets along the way add up. And, I think I heard Doug Fields say this first, and I've heard a lot of people follow up with, don't take on something new without giving up something old.
Yeah.
And that's a no thing.
I was going to mention Doug Fields. So if you don't know Doug Fields, he's a pastor, youth pastor, big name in youth ministry. And he's written a stack of books that probably stands about 3 or 4 feet tall. And the reason I know that is because he stood on a stage once and he had all of his books stacked on the table. And he said, if you're going to buy any of my books here today, buy this one. And he pulls the smallest one, and it's called What Matters Most. And it's not a very long read, but it's a very good read. And he talks through literally how to say yes and how to say no, and the Jesus pieces of that puzzle, and encouragement and freedom. The freedom to say no because you're choosing what matters most. So that was a great read for me early on in my professional ministry life.
We mentioned something and we glazed over it, so I feel like it's worth highlighting again.
What's that?
Jesus said no.
He did. He did. I mean,
Jesus said no to people and to being around people,
One of
which
my-
is probably our biggest struggle.
one of my favorite Jesus saying no stories is his best friend Lazarus was dying. And they
Yep.
came and said, Jesus, he's dying. You got to come. And Jesus said,
Nah,
no,
thanks.
no, I'm not making that trek today. And
One
then
of-
he did. And
one
then
of my
he
favorite-
raised him back to life. But that's Jesus.
One of my favorite Jesus said no stories is he said no to say yes and then to come back and say yes again. He's on his way to save a young girl. And that's where the story of the woman reaching out in the crowd and just, if I
Touching
only
his-
touch his garment.
Mm-hmm.
So he said no briefly to take time to just be with her in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And this little girl is dying. He's literally going to save a girl's life, but he says, "You know what? That can wait. That can wait just a minute." Now he's Jesus,
Yeah.
so
I'm like,
he,
wait a
he
second.
knows the outcome of the story. But I'm just saying, like, that's one of my favorite. You know what? I'm going to say no just to pause, just to be with this person in this moment.
And that's important too.
Yeah. Giving authentication of being a person
Yeah.
Yeah.
just by pausing in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are your questions this week. Where do you need to say no? Where do you need the permission, freedom to say no so that you can say the best yeses? And I think that's a book too, saying your best yes. Also, essentialism. It is a book too.
Essentialism. Look, I can say it too.
Where do you
I'm
need
gonna
to say
say
no?
qualified.
Where do you say you need to say yes? And where do you need to get some quality qualifications for those no's and yeses? I'm
Yes.
Renee.
I'm Mike.
And Brad.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Ministry Chemistry.